This is the F&B meeting that's being called to order at 7:32. Let's go through the agenda, and we'll get some things done real quick. So I sent out a little bit late, but I just got it in today. There was a question by the bond counsel to the bond counsel whether or not the town could use the funds that we previously appropriated when we appropriated the 103 million plus, and bond counsel has responded that under the original bond resolution, we can move the $792,010 to be paid out of that amount. So that eliminates that problem there. Quick review of what's going on. We also sent out, we finally got an executive summary. But let's go through some information of what we have. So the full price is $792,010. The $10 is being paid to the Zieglers. The $792,000 is being paid to their designee, and it's really to a trust, to an escrow, but we may direct it to whoever they tell us to direct it to. And that is going to be paid for screening, any security that they have to do, and any other cost, the hard and soft costs for the easements that were changed. There's 4 different easements, part of it. However, it need not be done and spent for any of it. That essentially is going over to the future purchaser of the Ziegler property. So that's where that money's going. I'm assuming there's some tax implications on doing it this way. So that's the financial aspects. The assessed value of the circle is $564,000. The differential is for those soft costs. There were 4 easements for, if I'm going to get the right terms for it, it's for the, okay, thank you. It's for the amendment and restating of the easements for the conservation, for Great Island Road, for the, amendment and restatement for the utilities and easement, and then for the A&R road and for the driveway. There's some other smaller easements that are going on that we're giving back based upon the property. But essentially, and there was some discussion, I think I've already said that when we bought the island, we really bought an island because it said not for public use. And because it said that, there was always a chance that the easements could be challenged in court. And that was one of the concerns from our party. And I heard that in Wayne, and I verified that I was able to say that. So what this does is eliminate any of those concerns of future legal challenges. It means all the easements are resolved. We have a roundabout that's now ours, and we have the appropriate access for it. Are there any other questions associated with this? And I can do my best to answer it on what's going on. No questions?
I just want to say I'm happy that they got to this conclusion. I'm pleasantly surprised that what it costs to come in to be able to acquire this. I was worried that it would be bigger, but I'm pretty happy with this.
Likewise, Jenny. Likewise.
I think we were all, and Jim Palin and I had this conversation, and I was, he did a good job. Jim, you may want to mark this day down because I say that jokingly, not too frequently. But I'm joking with him when I'm saying that. But the negotiation team did a really good job on this. And yes, it could have been a lot more on this. But everybody it was a complicated situation. But can I have a motion to approve the Great Island purchase of the circle?
I'll be happy to move.
And I have Bert seconding it.
Oh, just a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so it passes unanimously. That's all right. I'm going to check. I'm just telling Jim we just passed it. Let him in so I can tell him.
Are you secretary tonight, Jack?
No, Jenny is.
Okay.
I'm just texting Jim on there.
Oh, okay.
Jim, I just text you. We passed this unanimously. We were able to pass out the bond resolutions, opinions, and everything else. So we're going to move on to the next item, if that's okay. Unless there's something you want to say, Jim. Okay. So we can move on to the next item. One of the things for those people that are new is that it used to be called the buddy system, but one of the things that the Appendix B has always requested is that F&B assign liaisons, financial liaisons to the other committees. And so I'd like to do that tonight. There will be more allocations based upon the fact that some of the work that we do is ours. So like Louisa does the library. Well, F&B is the sole committee that looks at the library. So we'll move from there. I'm going to go to the committees. I need two people to look because actually Iris and Werner did the P&Z work last year. So I need two individuals to be the liaison to P&Z. Does anybody want to volunteer for that? Okay, I have Nick. Do I have somebody else? If not, we can add later. Okay. For community and environment and park and rec, we had Jenny. We lost Barry. Does somebody want to join Jenny on park and rec commission? Bill? Okay, fine.
Mhm.
We have quite a few when we come to public health and safety. Malin, you were one on, you want to say something, Jenny?
Yeah, Bill, which Bill? I didn't see.
Oh, Bill Dunn.
Bill Dunn.
Yeah, you're right. There's two Bills here. I forget that.
Sorry, Jenny.
No, that's my fault. Where's Malin? Malin, you were here. You did police last year. Do you want to continue on that?
Yeah, I did police and also all the EMS and fire marshal and all that kind of stuff.
Let's see. Peter, do you want to work with Malin on public health and safety? They cover a whole bunch of groups, but that way you can liaise in to Mac Patrick's committee. It's solely on the financial side, but
yes. Yes, absolutely. Happy to. Can I just ask what this is, as a liaison? What does that mean or represent?
It really means that, well, there's two parts to it. First, when we're reviewing the budgets, we put together a team of members of the Board of Finance who will be given certain sections of the budget, members of that committee who will be given certain sections of that budget. So like police, fire, there'll be somebody who's working on it. Usually it's Mac Patrick. And then members from F&B, and the 5 to 6 people get together and discuss that aspect of the budget. So if anything comes, so that everybody understands what everybody's opinion is before the Board of Finance votes on it. The goal of this committee is to be able to vote on a budget 10 minutes after the Board of Finance is done with their vote. So in the past, F&B used to do all the work after the Board of Finance voted on their budget. We've pushed it all up front because there's no reason to talk about a budget once the horse has already left the barn. So it's good teamwork. For the most part, you find that the Board of Finance individuals work well with us, as does the other committees. Also, should something come up on a financial aspect, as an example, we're going to be the lead on the Hanson Road bonding issue. Public Works will explain most of what the putting in the new bridge is going to be, because that's really within their purview. But also because that road will be closed for 5 to 6 months, it had to go to the police commission to get the authority to do it. So if there was a financial aspect to that, overtime that the police were anticipating in that, yourself and Malin would liaison with Mac Patrick to see if they're going to address it or if they are. So it's just, we help them where they need help on the financial aspects of it. But definitely we all work together on the budget side. And that's really what the main purpose.
Well, happy to join Malin as the liaison to that group.
I'm also adding, and this one, Bill Smith, if you're okay with that, Bill, because Bill had the fire departments. I am anticipating that we're going to have a very busy January agenda because we're going to have both of these budget resolutions. I was just looking at the Board of Selectmen meeting that's coming up, and they have a new fire engine that's coming up and a bonding for that. So we have those that are there, and we may have the HHR project coming back to us as well. Public Works, we had Charles and Bill Dunn last year. Charles isn't here, so in his absence, I'm continuing him on that committee. We did that to our vice chair of our district as well. Somebody wasn't there, we made them vice chair. But Bill, you're okay on that as well, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Louisa, you're on the library. I may put somebody else there with you. I need somebody to join. Did I get somebody to join you for Park and Rec, Jenny?
Yes, Bill Dunn.
Bill Dunn.
Yeah,
Oh,
you got me.
okay, Bill.
Well done.
It's in 2 separate spots. That's why I'm looking at that. Okay. We'll go through the other things that like there's operating expenses, sewers, and other things like that. But we'll sign them later in the year, actually within the next couple of months. Because, well, actually, by the end of the month, I'll have that done, only because we have the budgets being directed shortly. So that takes care of the assignments.
I'm out.
I'll give
I got
you
a
a
question.
copy of it, Jenny.
Okay. And you got Holly assigned?
No, I do not. Holly's not here.
Yeah, I know. So should we assign her to something as
No.
well as, well,
Paul's
Peter
is-
and Beth are on,
Peter's on education. I didn't even
Education.
say that, but Beth and Peter are on education.
Beth and Peter on education. So, and I'm assuming you want Bert and Luis and I to look at debt and pension and all
Yeah,
that.
but that's the other part. I'm looking for right now the liaisons to the RTM.
Gotcha.
Then I'll go back and we'll
Oh, right.
carry out how we're going to do the buddy system, because I'm taking last year's, filling in our section, going immediately to the chairs of the other committees, getting their people in there immediately, and then sending it on to Jim and Dan and saying, tell me who you're having from Board of Finance do this. So last year, unfortunately, Jim was, we got it late, but in all due respect, Jim was in the middle of negotiations for Great Island. So I'm just thinking if we can get ahead of the curve, we're done. Okay. F. Board of Ed school tour. I know I have Bert down, I have Beth down for going. In the past, we were limited in the number of people that can go. We're not limited this year. If you have not gone on a school tour, there's really not a lot of capital because Oxbridge is a new school, so it better not need more capital. And HHR, they're first going to work on it, would be in that project anyway. So it's a tour of what capital needs are for the middle school, the Darien High School, Tokenique, and the district office. These were discussed at the November 28th Board of Ed meeting. I will get that organized and out to everyone with a time stamp of when the discussion starts.
It's from, excuse me, Jack, it's from 8 to 10:30 on Saturday, right?
8 to 11, but
8
yeah,
to 11. I'd like to go if there's room for me.
there's always room for anyone who wants to go. I just,
Sure, mark me down.
all right.
I've done it, Jack, I've done it, or the other members of the committee, I've done it a number of times, many times. It's really worthwhile, even if we don't need to look at specific capital projects. It's a wonderful way to understand our school system. You got to put your hands on it. Reading numbers is great, but understanding our school system involves going to the schools. Thank you all.
Yeah, and the other thing, Bert, thank you for saying that because I couldn't have said it any better. The other thing that happens here is that they talk about projects that they had before and that they're completed, or here's this and that. So that's always good to see when the capital was put on last year and you know what the status is. So if anybody wants to go, I sent out the thing. It's 8:00 in the morning at Middlesex. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of it. You can show up. It's early. Hopefully we've had days that it's pouring rain. This used to be done in March. They moved it to December. They moved it to December because it did not make sense that the Board of Ed itself approved their budget before. And this, you'll see members of the Education Committee there, as well as members of the Board of Finance there. Okay. Tentative budget. I'm still working on it. I'm going to do a share of the screen. Which one am I going to? Okay. This is currently what I have working on because we basically go and put down everybody's meetings and then integrate when we can meet. It looks like if nobody's having a problem with it, that we'll try and meet on Wednesdays if that doesn't create a problem for people. We'll do as many virtual. We do have on January 11th an in-person meeting where I think we're going to start with one in-person meeting and then go and get another room and complete the other in-person that we may have to do. On the 12th, the Board of Ed wants questions that we have on their budget. And we'll talk about it next, but on the 11th, we'll be meeting with the Public Works Committee and hopefully Public Health and Safety on a joint meeting to address the two bonding resolutions that are coming forward. We may have to throw in there also a joint meeting with Public Health and Safety if they're moving the fire engine forward as well. So we'll have to figure out how to do that. We may do that to go over there and then work on the Board of Ed, final Board of Ed budget. Okay, the initial discussion of the draft capital budget was done November 28th, and that's in their meeting. On January 4th, the budget books be available, and it'll be the first presentation. It's a Thursday of the Board of Ed's budget. Now, I've sent out what the initial core was. I'm expecting some changes on that. On Saturday, there is the all-day marathon Board of Ed meeting at 35 Leroy. It's also going to be on Zoom. If there's going to be questions, usually Peter, one of us, Peter, myself, or Beth, will be the person to have the questions. You can text or email questions to us during the course of that day. If you are showing up at 35 Leroy, I do suggest you bring plenty of coffee and lunch. But it is sometimes nice to see everyone. And since I'm getting over the cold for being around my grandkids at Thanksgiving, that will allow me to get my next cold of the season. Since, I joke that that's a petri dish for me. The next meeting after that from the Board of Ed is January 9th. They'll follow up on, it's their regular meeting, but they'll follow up on questions. On the 12th, they're looking for submissions of questions, comments, and feedback to be given. I still have a problem with us doing that very early on, because in reality, the Board of Ed hasn't had their discussion. And I like that we make our comments after they've had their discussion. But if we keep things high level, that'll be fine. There's a special meeting this year where they're going to meeting with the chair and the designee. We're going to show up with at least 3 people for the Education Committee, us, and the Board of Finance to have a meeting discussing the budget. I don't know if it's going to be an official meeting or if it's just going to be a non-filmed discussion. But we had that last year, and it was very open and honest conversation on some. On the 30th, they have their next meeting. And by the way, at the same time, the Board of Ed is the Board of Selectmen is starting to have their meetings. The final vote on the Board of Ed meeting is February 13th. So they take a little bit more time. You're going to see the Board of Ed for new members start. They have a couple of 5 o'clock meetings. All of these are filmed, so if you can't make one, Watching video on Channel 79 is very helpful, and go from there. So usually at the Board of Selectmen meetings, they will only address the large budget items. So we're not going to see like the harbor master come in and talk about a $3,000 budget. But then the members of the Board of Selectmen ask their questions, and then any of the committee members from the RTM get to ask additional questions going on there. I do not know if it's going to be a hybrid meeting. It might be able to because it's being done in room 201. So that covers the budget.
Jack?
Yeah.
I think for our newer members, you should maybe after February 13th, once the board of why don't you explain the rest of the budget season and how the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen start, when the Board of Finance will be reviewing, and when it will come to the RTM, and when we do the final.
There's a legal date, I believe it's March 5th, is the legal date for the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed to deliver their budgets to the Board of Finance. So let me start at the beginning. The initial budget that's being presented is the superintendent's budget, or it's the town administrator's budget. It's not either one of the other boards' budget until such time that they do their final vote. And there'll be a final vote on the school budget and the school budget capital. They'll be together. On the school, I separate that because while we elect people in the town for a school budget, and while we fund the school budget, the school Board of Ed gets its authority from the State Department of Education, not from the town. And so we provide an overall appropriation. So even if we said, you're buying 1 million crayons and we don't like you buying 1 million crayons, so we're going to cut $50,000 for the expense of those 1 million crayons. We can cut $50,000 from the total appropriation, but they can still buy the 1 million crayons, because anything that we're going to be looking at, other than some of the contract aspects, are really placeholders. So it gives a rough idea to what's going on. We do have the capability of cutting capital, the RTM and the Board of Finance. On the Board of Selectmen, we actually have line item veto. Now, you can't line item veto a contract because we can't force them to fire people. So we can, though, say we don't want you to hire additional people. That we have a say on. So we do have line item veto on the Board of Selectmen budget. The RTM does. And in fact, we did a cut last year of $75,000 out of Board of Finance contingency. And we've done other cuts in the past. We all have a say on their capital. So it goes to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance will deliberate. And I believe April 4th, they pass their final budget. So once they've approved the budget, it's the Board of Selectmen budget going to the Board of Finance, Board of Ed budget going to the Board of Finance. Once the Board of Finance approves the budget, it's now the Board of Finance's budget. And F&B being the liaison to the RTM for the Board of Finance, we're reviewing the Board of Finance's budget. Now, that may have us go back to the other boards and such, but that's the importance of trying to communicate with the Board of Finance prior to their April 4th date, that, if on the contingency we cut, we've been known to go after that contingency for 4 or 5 years. So any of the other discussion was, I'm not going to use the word that I'm thinking of, was fluff. That's a nice word to say. But if there's something that we really have a concern about, we should be expressing it, and the Board of Finance should know about it before they vote on their final budget. Things do come up, though, and we'll vote on the budget, and then on May 13th, it goes to the RTM. And for the most part, our committee will be the main presenter of the overall high-level budget. There's certain things in the budget that we'll report on because we're the sole responsibility. Example, the library. There's some additional funds that get reported on. The education budget is introduced by the RTM Education Committee, and we're secondary on that. Other than that, we do high level, and then when it goes to the individual departments or sections, we expect the RTM committees that are responsible for public health and safety or public works, P&Z, or Park and Rec, to do their reporting. I'm sure I left somebody out. But they'll do the main course. We'll just take a very high level look at that. So to give the full story, in most cases, budgets are approved. They could be modified, but they're approved on that date. If for any reason, which has never happened to the best of my knowledge in the town of Darien, should a budget be totally rejected, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, that doesn't need to be a first, then they have to come back with a new budget, and they're limited in what their budget is to the current year. So that's just giving the full definition of what goes on, but that's definitely a poison pill that F&B would never want to take place. That means that we didn't work well as a town in getting things done. But that explains the process for the budget, and we should be passing it on the 13th. That is part of our job also, by the way. If we're satisfied with that budget, part of the responsibility of F&B is to make sure that we can solicit enough support that those budgets are passed. So while we'll challenge on one side, we're also a liaison to make sure budgets are put through this town. So does that give proper definition, Jenny? There is a, if you really want to be bored for an hour, Jim Cameron did an interview with me on the budget process that's out there, on what goes on. It's a very boring hour to listen to. So I'm not recommending you do it, but if you really want to spend an hour because you can't sleep, it's a good thing to listen.
No, Jack, I heard it was nominated for an Oscar in the category of live interviews. There is no such category, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. The
Pioneering a new category.
the most difficult thing is you're supposed to be looking at that little white dot on the top of your computer because this is done virtually. And meantime, Jim, who's doing the interview, is over here on the screen. So your eyes tend to look at Jim, and Jim sort of nicely motions that you're supposed to be looking straight ahead. So that was one of the bigger challenges. I've spoken to Wayne, and we got some initial things going on the new ordinance for the tax assessor. I may be trying to move that forward as quickly as possible. We're going to take the first cut. I've enlisted Peter because it's always good to have an attorney work on it, and I figured Beth had enough other things to do. To work with us, and put something forward to Wayne. I've stressed to Wayne that we want this done sooner rather than later. But according to the state law, which is what we're implementing, landlords would have to provide a form to the tax assessor's office no later than June 1st, and that's used to determine the assessment value of the property. The form has to be sent and received by the landlords no later than 45 days before June 1st, which brings it to about April 15th. So if we keep on moving back, we want to make sure that we have enough of this approved and in law and the form done prior to the April 15th date if we want to initiate that this year, which we most probably do because we now have more apartments than what we had in the past. And this is a tool that's used to value those apartments. So that's an approach on that. So the last thing is the reval. I'm going to recommend that if you haven't listened to Jay-Z's discussion on the reval, it's worthwhile. During that discussion, John will, let me also apologize. When I mentioned Jay-Z, we're talking about our first selectman, John Zagroski. It's just the same way that, we'll talk about Jim Palin, who's the chair of the Board of Finance, and we'll just say Palin. Being that my name is also 5 letters, I'll be called Davis. So it just goes with the territory of having 5 letters in your last name. But John does a really good and much watched interview with Cameron on it. I did, though, want to do a share of the screen for something that I've done, just in case anybody's watching. The estimated total of what the grand list went up was 29%. So if you're in the range of 30, 31, 32, you're probably in that range, and you might go up a little bit in what the taxes are. But let me do a share of the screen for something that an analysis just to show how this works. So I took last year's grand list after adjustments, and I put this here also because we removed Great Island from it. There's local, state, and tax relief abatements that are given that reduce the grand list further. And then we have a grand list, but we do a collection rate, what the last 5 years collection on taxes were. And then we reduce it by 25 basis points because there can be some movement in that from year to year. And that becomes the adjusted grand list to which everything is based upon. Now, F&B has realized a number of years ago, probably about 6 or 7, we started focusing more and more, maybe 10, because it was on the last reval that we did this. We started focusing more and more on the numerator of this equation, which is the operating and capital budgets, less revenues, because that's the things that the town boards control. We don't control the grand list. That's determined by market value. And while new things come on, just so you understand, if somebody does a renovation to their house, you put in a new kitchen. They don't revalue the whole house. They estimate what that new kitchen would be worth at the time of the last revaluation to determine if there's an increase to the grand list. And so it's like if you had done it before this new year came in, 24, if you had completed it in 23, they would have looked at what the grand list was from 2019 change and what the value would have cost then to add it on. So just because a house sells doesn't mean the grand list goes up by what the new value of the house is. It stays where it is. So what I did is say, okay, if we said, because I like round numbers, it's easier to work with than 29%. If the reval went up by 30% and the new grand list, I calculated out what the new adjusted grand list would be. And then what I did is say, okay, what would the mill rate have been? So the current year's mill rate is 1761. If we took the same expenses from last year that we had to raise through taxes, the mill rate calculated out would have been 13.55. And if I took a $1.5 million assessed value and increase that by 30% and calculate what their taxes would be under the 1761, the current grand list, their taxes would have been $26,415. Now, understand there's a lot of rounding in these grand lists because we're dealing with big numbers in that. With the 30% increase, their taxes would have been $26,423, which is an $8 difference, which is really a rounding error. So everything's staying the same. The increase in the grand list by 29%, depending upon where you fall in, says that your taxes are going to be relatively the same. The other thing that's been making the rounds, where people have been complaining about Great Island, there are no Great Island expenses in what we raised last year. We haven't paid we're first paying the interest on the bond anticipation notes this year. So that hasn't been added in. So just to respond to anybody who thinks that Great Island's purchase has resulted in the increase in the assessed value, that is not a true or valid statement. This is based upon the market-driven rates of what's there. And that basically is a little discussion on the grand list just to mathematically show that if we use this year's rates with the proposed grand list increase, everybody's taxes would be the exact same. So I just did want to cover that. We're going to get more into that as we go on. We can anticipate that several people will challenge that, so there will be adjustments to the grand list going forward. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Jenny.
No, I just put into the group chat the link to the Channel 79 video that John did on the reval. So you can click on that and look at it if you want.
Thank you. If you don't mind, can you distribute that to the committee on email?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I did this whole agenda and I never did an adjournment. Do we have any outstanding minutes, Jenny?
We do.
All right, this is
From
your
November
part of the
1st.
meeting.
I emailed them a while ago, so hopefully you had a chance to review them.
Yep.
So,
By the way, for our new members, you can still vote because you're voting on the veracity that Jenny takes good minutes, not whether or not you were there or not.
so
Jenny
may I
does
have a
good
motion? If there aren't any questions, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 1st special meeting? I see Bert, I see Beth, all in favor?
Aye.
We got 10. Beautiful. That's
Okay, so now the one part of the agenda I didn't put on, which means you really can't change the meeting for a special meeting, is that I didn't put on adjournment. So I guess we can't adjourn. Bill, will you move the adjournment?
So
Bill
moved.
Smith. No, Bill Smith. I got him. He raised
So
his hand
moved.
before I was missed. I need a second on that.
A second.
We have Bill Dunn on the second, all in favor of adjourning, and we got through with a lot of stuff in 45 minutes, which is perfect. Thank you all very much for attending. Have a pleasant Christmas holiday if we see each other at the State of the Town meeting, aren't we?
Thank
Um,
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.